My name is Thandeka Msi. For those who were not here or forgot from last week, we are facilitating this session as Unit for Graduate and Career Services. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the things that I know we spoke about last week, just to remind you that one, when we say your CV needs to be tailored for every opportunity, we don't use the same CV for different opportunities that we apply for. So why tailor? It's so it can meet the needs of your prospective employers. It can speak to the needs of your prospective employers. To be able to do that, there are many ways. Sometimes people are not necessarily responding to an advertisement, and maybe they are just uploading the CV in a career platform, or like in Mati's careers, for instance, which I'm going to share at the end of the session, or sometimes they are responding to an advertisement, or they've been asked to submit a CV. So for different reasons, you might need to tailor your CV. So if it's just general, I always suggest to students that your calendar or your studies will give you an idea of skills that you should have. But further than that, sometimes when you Google a position of your interest, even if it's an advertisement that was posted ages ago, or let me say months ago, it gives you an idea, even if it's outdated, a little outdated because you cannot apply, it gives you an idea of the competencies and skills that they are looking for. And therefore, you will know that in your CV, these are the skills or competencies that you should capitalize on. But the rule of thumb is stick to what they said they are looking for in the advertisement. Which skills? Because the reality is that when they receive your CV, when your prospective employers receive your CV, they look at your CV against the advertisement. They look and see if there is a match between what they see in your CV and what they said they are looking for, or which skills or competencies that they said they are after. So yes, we say you update your CV every 6 months. They say, personally, I say that's too long. Every time you get exposed to a new skill, maybe you become a member of a society or a member of a committee, or maybe you got a new part-time job, or you became involved in maybe, any of activities that you get involved in, co-curricular activity that you get involved in, that will equip you with a particular skill, new skill, or enhance a certain new skill. Update your CV, or any course, additional course that you know could be relevant, or any volunteering opportunity. Update your CV every time. So that would mean that you will end up having a very long CV, which is fine. You can have that long CV, but select relevant information now. Select the relevant competencies, select the relevant experiences for a particular advert or company or position when you apply. That's one of the things that's going to make your CV uniquely yours. But one other thing is also, always remember, if you're responding to an advertisement which has listed all the skills that they are after and the responsibilities of the person in the position, there is a big probability that all these CVs will claim to have the same skills, that have been acquired. What makes you different from other applicants or other competitors is how or where you acquired those skills. I'm also going to show you, therefore, where organizations or recruiters zoom into to get what they're looking for. So we say your CV is not only a description of your courses or even the part-time jobs that you have had, but especially at this point in your job seeking life, you need your achievements and the skills that you have acquired count more, because they are aware, your prospective employers are aware that you possibly have not worked for longer periods of time, so you could have acquired skills elsewhere. So there are different formats of CVs you get. I'm just mentioning these four because I get, well, the last one now, I don't get as much I haven't received anyone asking for a creative CV from me in 3 or 4 years now, counting 2022. Let's say in 3 years, I haven't. But in the past, I would receive requests from students saying they are in the creative world, therefore they're looking for a creative CV. Sometimes students will say, because I've had big gaps in my education and big gaps, if it's somebody who's worked for a longer period of time, big gaps in my working experience, and therefore I want to rather capitalize on my skills, then I will suggest for a functional skills based and have a one-on-one with that kind of a student. Now I'm seeing more and more students who want to apply in institutions of higher learning or in research positions, whether it's a research position offered in a company or in an NGO or at an institution of higher learning, but I'm getting more and more of such requests. Then I also tell students to contact me in person for us to talk about their academic or research-based CV. But today's focus is going to be on the reversed chronological CV because, in fact, for one reason, for different reasons. One being that all these CVs must be reversed chronological anyway. They all must be reversed chronological. The only difference is that one will be more creative with color and infographics and all that. The other one, which is creative CV, the functional one will start with the skills instead of ending with the skills, and the academic or research-based one will add certain sections that are not necessary for organizations or for companies, some companies. So they're all reverse chronological. And the other thing is that most recruiters are saying they prefer it because it's easy to refer to it during interviews. So if it says reversed chronological, always remember, in the past, I would just say you start with the most recent first. Start with the most recent first. If it's your education, what appears first in your CV is what you are currently doing, down to grade 12, nothing further than that. If it's your work experience, start with the latest work experience, down to what you did in grade 12, nothing further than that. But until I spoke to a few recruiters who said to me, sometimes when students claim to be working in a position and then they just write 2019, let me make an example. 2019, I was in this position. It gives an impression that you worked there for the whole year. And when we look at the rest of your CV and we realize that it is not possible that you could have worked there for the whole year, we look at that as a misrepresentation of information, because when one has worked in 2018 in a position and the other has worked from June to July in 2018 in a position, we can almost know or figure out how well one can act or can work in that position, how well the competencies that were gained from that position, how well refined are they, So when you say in 2018, you are giving us an impression that you can do that work very well. So the chances are the rest of the CV is not well represented. And when we're dealing with lots and lots of CVs, we just take that CV aside. So as a result, I learned to emphasize the importance of chronology in your CV. Yes, most recent first, but most especially timelines are important. I'm going to show you where exactly these organizations CV companies go to look for, to have an idea of how well, or what it means, what the importance of time for them. But like I said, it's generally used. It's a generally used format by most companies. And another thing that they like about it is that it shows a solid, if it's education, they know that the education they see first is the education that is most important, or a position that they see first is a position that that is most important. So there is a tendency of them seeing your progress, a steady progress in your education or a steady progress in your employment, and therefore they are able to zoom into what interests them the most. right? But like any other thing, it's got its negatives as well. One of the negatives is that it reveals gaps in employment. That's why I said sometimes some students who have gaps in employment and education will contact me after this session and ask and ask for a one-on-one so we can both figure out whether it's necessary to have a functional based CV or not, or skills based CV or not. So do that if you feel that you've got big head gaps as well. And the other thing is that it does not highlight skills. Now I'm going to show you where exactly companies zoom into to get skills if you are not using a functional based one. First things first, personalized letterhead. Gone are the days when you use your cover page, written CV for Thandeka Msi, you know, with all the border lines. Sometimes people would even have flowers in the borders for the border lines. They say that's not professional. In fact, they count that as a page. So when they say submit a 2-page CV, they are not looking for the cover page. They expect you to have your letterhead, a personalized letterhead on top of the first page with only your address, the contact details. Well, you don't necessarily have to use your snail mail now. It's not necessary. But some people still insist on using it as a way of showing that I'm not going to have to relocate. It's not going to be costly to call me for interviews, and it's not going to be costly to employ me because you might need to rent a place for me and all that. Some people will insist. It depends entirely on you. Remember, your personalized letterhead is personalized. It's what speaks to you. It's the look and feel that you want. So it's okay to have it if you want, but most especially your contact details, your email. Yes, your phone, your cell phone, but people change cell phones, you know, and forget that they've sent a CV with an old cell phone. Some people will have landlines, but I always say your email. People have asked, can I include my LinkedIn? If you have worked on your LinkedIn after having attended my session, if you're going to, I don't remember if we have arranged a session on LinkedIn, but if we haven't, you can always log into Mati's Careers. I will show you a short link to fill in the profile and also register for our sessions. I facilitate a LinkedIn optimization section. When you have attended that and worked on your LinkedIn, then you can include your LinkedIn link or address as well. Then these two are optional. Your personal profile or a summary, some people call it a personal statement, and your career objective. Now, in the personal profile, this is where recruiters zoom into to have an idea of which skills you have used. I mean, you have acquired. Always remember this section has to be tailored. It always has to speak to the needs of your prospective employer. You cannot draft this section without the advertisement, because the advertisement will tell you what they are after, and therefore it will speak to those needs. This is where they look for sets of skills that you have acquired. But in short, in summary, if you're going to submit a cover letter or covering letter or motivation letter, then it's that paragraph. It looks like one of the paragraphs of your cover letter, but you are not going to copy your cover letter. When I have sessions on cover letters, I discuss that as well. You are not going to copy your cover letter, but your cover letter becomes an add-on. You know, it's an addition to what you've written. So this is the only place where you're going to have a paragraph in your CV. Prospective employers don't have time to read through. They want to scan. They want to get the information quickly. You know, information must spring out from your CV so they can quickly get what they are looking for. I'll show you some examples just now. And then feedback that I get from many recruiters only last year, 2020, towards the end or early 2021, did I get one person from many years ago, one person who says, no, it's fine, they can include the career objectives. Otherwise, in the past, all of them would just say, tell them to steer away from career objectives. Reason being that they don't know the difference between career objectives and personal profile. Personal profile, of course, it's about the skills that you have acquired. But career objectives are objectives, right? They are about what you intend to bring with in the organization, what you intend to achieve in the organization, what they stand to gain from employing you, not vice versa. It is not about you gaining from them in this section. So some people will have something like, I'm looking for a an a conducive atmosphere for growth. It sounds grand, a conducive atmosphere for growth. Ask yourself a question: who stands to gain from this? If it's you who stands to gain from the conducive atmosphere for growth, you should be paying them then, not vice versa. So it's not your career objective. Your career objective should be something like looking for an opportunity to showcase my stakeholder relationship management skills. Looking for an opportunity to, to showcase this, to bring this to the organization. But should you decide to use career objectives, make sure that you keep them clear, concise, realistic, and within the media. There's what's this acronym? It's not STARMAN. What's this acronym again? But keep them specific, and very realistic. I hate forgetting. But anyway, I forgot the acronym now. And in the immediate future, it must be something that's going to be measurable, that's going to be seen. Smart, yes, smart. Keep them smart. It must be something that's going to be seen. Smart stands for specific, be specific. It must be measurable. It must be achievable. It must be smart R, realistic, and T for time bound, within the immediate future. Okay, and then your personal information is another section, by the way, that is optional, especially if you don't have space when they ask you to when they give you a limit of pages and you think you've got so much to include and you don't have space. Then some recruiters say, it's fine if you don't have this. But I personally think I've seen it working for many people. I just recently, when I was in the panel in another center, we had in one of the requirements of the position was that the person must be fluent in at least 2 languages, Western Cape that are spoken in the Western Cape. And some people didn't have this section, and therefore it was difficult to tell whether they are fluent or whether they are, they've got both languages and all that. In some instances, they're looking for somebody who has a car, or has got a driving license. So sometimes it helps, especially if there are things like this where they need certain things. But we say avoid including things that could open you to chances of being discriminated against. For instance, many recruiters would say, tell them not to include gender. It's none of our business unless the position is looking for a particular gender. Date of birth is not necessarily if your ID is already there. If you are South African, by the way, if you are South African and your ID is already there, I am told your ID, it gives an indication of the gender as well, for that matter. Marital status is not necessarily your religion, your health. Well, maybe for you, your health might be important, but I do want to believe that a company where you might apply, when health is important, they ask you to go and have a health examination with a doctor, and then the doctor submit, or doctor gives you the certificate and you submit the certificate, or the doctor submits with them directly to them. So when they need that kind of information, they will get. Now, in the past, I would say disability, you don't have to include disability, because I had students coming back to me and giving me feedback that had they disclosed their disabilities, they would not have been employed, and then they got to understand within the organization that they were not going to be employed, but because they liked the personality, because they were called for interviews, and then the personality was, their personality was preferred, therefore they got the position, and the companies were prepared to make changes to accommodate them. So I would say to students, if you can, you don't have to. Until I met a few recruiters at I think it was okay at a bank, let me call it that way, in 2018, who made me aware. Well, I was sort of aware, but I didn't really think about it then. That companies are mostly given an incentive for employing people with a disability, and because of that, it would help to include a disability as long as you add a reasonable accommodation with you. Mention what the disability is and make sure that it's a disability that has been diagnosed. It's not a disability that you think you have diagnosed, and you mention the disability and reasonable accommodation alongside with that. Well, personally, I thought, companies who are looking for people with a disability, they normally write that, they include that in their advertisement somehow. But apparently, it does help you if you've got a disability to include. But when I thought about it later, especially hearing from students now who have I don't want to call it a disability, but who have mental wellness or vulnerabilities, who would say, I wouldn't want to work for a place that wouldn't understand my condition or my disorder, So I do include that, and then I include a reasonable accommodation. By the way, all these things depend entirely on you whether you want to include them or not, but it's my responsibility to let you know what companies are saying. So whatever decision you make, you know that it's an informed decision. So it depends entirely on you whether you want to include, but I have been told to encourage you to include a disability, but remember to include a reasonable accommodation that you would need with that disability. For instance, some people have problems with eyesight, and therefore they will, add something that has to do with I forgot the name of the program that helps them, with their eyesight. Now, if you look at all my titles, it's big, bold. Well, if it might not be bold, but capital letters, you can decide what you want, but it makes it easy to zoom into one section. So I would suggest that you also, make sure that all your sections of your CV, the titles or headings are either capitalized, or and maybe one size bigger than your normal font size, or maybe bolded a bit, or this. You need to draw your attention to your recruiter to a section of their interest. Make sure that it's well written and capitalized when necessary, including your education. Then the next section would be your education. We say this is where we start saying most recent, first, reversed, chronological, and where chronology counts, timelines. I'm going to share now examples and go through those examples, and then go back, if we have time, go back to this presentation to see if there's anything that I have forgotten. Also have time for questions at the end. So if you've got a question, feel free to write the question on the side, to write the question on the chat function, and then I'm going to spend time on questions and respond to some of those questions. These are the things that I was talking about. Oh, by the way, yes, while on it, let me start with this one. You probably see that these are different CVs. There are many different formats of CVs. When you select, just be careful. When you select a format of a CV that's online, make sure that the font is because sometimes when you cut and paste, we end up having different fonts that look terrible. You don't want anything to affect the look and feel of your CV. So make sure, sorry, that you use a font that you have, in your computer. Now here's the letterhead that I was talking about. Just your contact details and your LinkedIn profile if you want. This is the section that I said is optional. Your personalized personal profile. Some call it a personal statement or a summary, or yeah. which is personalized. You don't need to label it, but if you want, you can label it. But just remember, I said this is where it is okay to have a paragraph. As you have this paragraph, I want you to take note, for instance, of this one. It's a become analytic, become management science. Possibly some of the things that they were after were people who have developed innovative and cost-effective skills, somebody who has a strong planning skills, who can organize, someone who has a commercial acumen and all that. But it's not enough to just mention them. Everybody who applies in this position will mention them, but show them where you acquired these skills from NEMPEC, from my small business of branding. It could be just a small business of branding, t-shirts and mugs and what have you. But I got to understand how business works. I began to know how to cost, how to you budget and all those things. So this is what I'm talking about when I say personal business profile. You can decide to label if you have, but remember, it's not enough to just mention the skills. But always also remember that these skills must be the skills that appear in the advertisement with some proof. You're more like whetting their appetites. You're giving them a reason to call you for interviews. Now, you will notice that there's a space here for an image. By the way, many years, recruiters will say, obviously no image, because we said we don't want to open you to chances of being discriminated against. But now I'm seeing, especially younger recruiters saying, I would want to see someone that I'm going to interview, but it's a wish. When I ask them, I have to mention this. When I ask them, not even a single one of them, when I ask them, does it happen? Has it ever happened that you do not call someone for interviews because you don't like what you see? Not even a single one of them said no. In fact, what they say is tell them to look clean, tell them to shave a bit, tell them to look presentable, and all those things. Yes, we want you to be presentable even when you go for interviews, for that matter. But it is not fair to be judged because you've got beard or you've got dreadlocks or you've got this or that, right? But let me just warn you, should you choose to include it, make sure that it's just head and shoulders and it looks prim and proper. Watch your background. Don't have a very busy background with leaves and and all that. If you've got dark hair or you're dark like me, in complexion, black background doesn't do justice. Rather white or gray background, unless you are lighter in complexion or you are white, then maybe a black background would be fine. But look at a good looking picture to include them. Remember, I said it's optional to have your personal details. This one does not have, but this one does have, because this person wanted to showcase that I've got my own car, I've got a driver's license, and decided to have, instead of having the languages here, show them differently, because maybe the position needed somebody who is fluent in at least 2 languages in the Western Cape. It depends entirely on you how you want to present this, but make sure that you've got all the requirements of the not all, but okay, yes, all the requirements of the position that you have. But if you don't have all the requirements, that does not stop you from applying. I've seen that working as well, where we did not have a single candidate that met all the requirements, and we had an option to choose at least some to select people for interviews, people who were short of just one requirement. I'm making an example, just one requirement and all that. So it does happen as well. Now let's look at this one as an example. If you look at all of them, capitalized, possibly a different color, but please be cautious with color. Companies say, please tell them preferably, many companies say preferably black and white, except for those in the creative world. And then a few recruiters say it is okay to have gray or light or blue, but please not red and yellow and all that. So that I will leave up to you as well. But just remember that sometimes with color, if it's going to be printed, your look and feel gets compromised. So whatever color you decide to choose, whether gray or blue, print and see how it looks before you forward it, because just in case they need to print it and bring it along, you don't want it to look like you are crying if they don't have a good enough ink. Okay, so your education section, please take note of the timelines. 2020 till currently. 2019 is the whole year. It's fine. March 2020, for instance, in the work experience, March 2020 is an issue. They want to know when things were done. Let's look at this one, for instance. This one says November 2018 to January 2029. It gives, I'm sorry, 2019, it gives an idea of time, when with some of the things that in June 2022, I was an intern at Nampak. Because when you say just 2022, it gives an impression that you worked for the whole year. So please take note, you don't have to write all your modules or your courses. If you've got majors, you can just choose your majors and relevant electives, especially if the advertisement says exposure to this would be an added advantage, or that this advertisement is looking for, or this position is looking for somebody who has this knowledge, then you can add any relevant elective. You don't go further than 29. You don't go further than your high school, grade 12. They say, no, we're not interested in anything else but at least grade 12. And you don't need to include your results in grade 12, more especially if you don't have space, or you really don't have anything to boast about, anything special to boast about. And then the next section after your education will be your co-curricular activities and achievements. This is also where recruiters zoom into to have an idea of what have you been up to. By the way, for them, for many, I believe, for many, your studies are important. Yes, they want to know if you meet the minimum requirements, but your studies are not going to do the job. What's going to do the job, the actual job, is you, your personality, your skills, and all that. They're going to work with you as a person, not how well you have done in your studies. So they say this section is very important. What have you been up to until now besides your academics? What is it that you've been involved in? And then they're able to sort of guess which other skills have you acquired. That might not even be in the advertisement, but could be needed by the organization or by the department or by the company. For instance, this student was a chairperson, so we know that this person knows how to handle meetings, knows how to give people opportunities to speak, knows how to sum up, knows how to get to resolutions, knows how to follow up and get things done. A project manager could have done a needs analysis before embarking on an extra tuition project for Kayamandi High School. Must have gone to the school and found out, do you need our services? Would you appreciate if we would come to your school and teach maths and science, for instance? How many people are interested in this? And then have had to work maybe with maths teachers in grade 11 or grade 12, and maybe the grade head as well, maybe the principal or the deputy principal, maybe a parent or governing body, stakeholder relationships. This person has managed stakeholders at this school. So this person has done possibly a needs analysis, possibly stakeholder relationship management, possibly has had to budget, maybe has had to submit a proposal, maybe has had to, knows that we must in our budget, we must have miscellaneous in case when we go there, there's load shedding and we had prepared to use this and we cannot use the projector. So what else can we use? Maybe you might need to buy newsprints and cocky pens and this in case, So and maybe at the end of the project they need to submit feedback. So there's a lot that they end up assuming from just your responsibilities. Wow, a head of the debating society, so it must be somebody who's good with communication skills, more especially persuasion and all that. So that's why it's important to include what it is that you were involved in. You were in the management board as a treasurer, so you've got some uh, um, financial skills that you could have acquired in that position. Yes, we didn't say we're looking for somebody with those skills, but that would add value for us if that could be a reason, by the way, for them to call you for interviews so they can talk to you and ask you more questions in interviews. And then work experience is also another way, a place where they look for timelines. They want to know, what have you been up to and how long did you do certain things here, so that they can assume how good you are in those skills. For instance, you were a fitness and wellness coordinator from maybe March until now. And these are the things. It's very important to mention or to write in bullet points what responsibilities. Many people forget to include responsibilities in their positions in there. So it's very important to include responsibilities in those positions. Even simple things like, let me just show you, simple things like working in a restaurant. Where is it? Oh, it's not here. It's not in this one. Working in a restaurant, simple things like that could um, could display a lot of things that they could be after, because this is also where they get an idea of which skills or competencies. That, let me look at this one, for instance. This person was a tutor. One, students have got this tendency of saying, I was just a tutor. That's all. I was just a tutor. And in our one-on-ones, do I realize that they say they're looking for a functional or a skills-based CV because they didn't work. They only tutored and it was a volunteering opportunity, so they don't have experience. But when I talk to them and ask them questions, I realize this person did a baseline assessment. That's a needs analysis. It depends, by the way, how you are going to phrase it to suit the needs of a prospective employer. Remember, sometimes you submit something online and then they want to detect certain terms. The program detects certain terms in your CV. You want that program to detect the terms that they are after. So you might say baseline assessment, or you might decide to say needs analysis instead of baseline assessment, because it's a project coordinator position that you are applying for. I did a baseline assessment before I taught my students. I had to plan, and I also had to facilitate the group, and also gave individualized, attention to those who struggled. I accommodated different learning styles and different different cognitive levels in the same classroom. If it's a small classroom or if it's an individual, I had to, conduct formative and summative assessment, and all these things down to monitoring, down to designing an improvement plan. How can I forget that? An improvement plan, because after having marked them, I noticed that there's a lot that they didn't know. So I had to go back and teach those aspects differently, using different approaches to teaching. Maybe I decided to start using videos that I found online, or I decided to bring an ear to the room if I'm going to teach an organ, in biology and stuff like that. So I had to design improvement plan and follow up with those improvement plans and know when exactly I'm going to measure again to see if there is any improvement and monitor progress and all those things. So imagine you were just a tutor and this is a whole lot of things that you did as a tutor, which in fact could translate to project management. If you think about it, these could translate to project coordination, if you think about it. So don't take your positions lightly in any place, because there's a lot of skills that one acquires through those experiences. For instance, let's see here, encourage sportsmanship. You're going to get these so you can have these examples, but there's a lot that this candidate could have done at as a fitness and wellness coordinator at Kayamandi, or is doing at Kayamandi Youth Academy, or as a volunteer. This position actually started as a volunteer. The person started as a volunteer here, and then when there was a part-time position, the person got employed in that part-time position. So many of the skills were showcased, including in your YouTube channel, that could have started an income, that could have generated some income for you. So these are just examples for you to sit and think about the responsibilities in your volunteering opportunities, your responsibilities in your what you think is a small, unimportant job. Sit down and think about those responsibilities and think about how you're going to phrase these responsibilities so they speak to the needs of your prospective employers. Okay, so the rest is just volunteering opportunities. And then your interest, I always say, well, in the past, most of them, of the recruiters would say only relevant interests. But now I'm seeing more and more younger recruiters saying we want well-rounded people. We want people who don't only have interests that are related to their jobs, but who can do something else as well. But I always say, when you decide to include interests, think about them. Remember, interests are what people used to call them hobbies, right? But it's just that a term that is used more now is interest. What I'm interested. It's not necessarily what you are interested in. It's what you you enjoy doing. So some people, but think about an interest that you use, because sometimes even an interest can showcase your abilities. I mean, chess is somebody who is good at chess, is someone who is good at reading or anticipating an opponent's move. So you could be an asset in an organization that struggles with their competitors. Start taking from just a small, interest, but you think it means you are able to plan, you are observant, you take time to make decisions, well thought decisions. That is, you can anticipate your opponent's move and therefore act ahead, and all those things. For instance, I think I have wine tasting here. Okay, I don't have an interest here. And there's one CV that has wine tasting, which is fine, but it's something worth thinking about. If you are going to apply at ESCOM, for instance, where they might want to test you before you go to a plant, they might think twice to employ somebody who on a Saturday will have gone to a wine tasting spree and not be available on Saturday, after hours and all that, or yeah, because they've had something to drink. But at this Distel, it could be a different ball game completely. They might be interested in calling you for interviews because you are showing interest in their business, and maybe they might not even have a wine taster, for argument's sake. But I know what wine tasting is for Stellenbosch University students. Just make sure that when you go to those wine tasting sprees, and before you include that in your CV, you exactly have learned something from those wine tasting outings that you normally do, and you can tell the difference between different wines and their aromas and their fruit bases and what have you. Okay, and then the skills section is another place that I get feedback from companies that they 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 like seeing how one has acquired a skill. Well, of course, people can also use infographics. Your younger recruiters are saying if infographics are fine, you know, but the older ones will say, I don't know what that darker line, that line out of 10 where you will have maybe dots or a darker line that shows that you know half of this or 3/4 of this or a quarter of this skill. Many of them will say, what does that mean? What does that mean? How did you even arrive to measuring it? Because it's difficult to measure an acquisition of a skill. So what many of them say is, give us an example of how or where you acquired the skill. One recruiter said to me, I hired someone because we were looking for somebody. It was in Stellenbosch and a logistic firm. So we were looking for somebody who has knowledge of efficient routes. So because we don't want to spend a lot of time for people, for our drivers must not spend a lot of time and fuel on the road. So we needed somebody, amongst other things, knowledge of efficient road. But we employed or called this person for interviews because they said something about being a tour guide. I gained my knowledge of efficient route from being a tour guide at Stellenbosch. What? I forgot the name of this company. So we thought, wow, a tour guide. So this person must be very eloquent in more than one language. Is definitely not boring because it takes somebody not boring to be able to capture the attention of people on tour. It must be, somebody who's got good communication skills. It must somebody who knows the flora and the fauna of the area, who knows the history of the area. So this would add value when we have, because we often have visitors from outside Stellenbosch or from outside the country. So we could make use of this person's expertise as well. So by just telling them where or how you acquired the skill, you are giving, again, you are whetting their appetite. You are giving them a taste of the other things that you have done and the other skills that you have acquired. Oh yeah, it's this one that you have acquired, through your participation. So a skills section, I would advise not a paragraph, definitely not a paragraph, but at least a sentence or so that gives an example. That's what makes you unique. Everybody's going to claim the same skill, but what makes you different is where or how you acquired the skill. It's decision making, yes, but you acquired it through a leadership as in a debating society. So we also know, therefore, that you are good with communication, with persuasion. You are good with this or that. And then the very last session would be your referees. Only last year have I learned the importance of tailoring this section. Skills section is going to be tailored. I must mention that. I think I forgot to mention it. Has to be tailored because it always has to speak to the needs of a prospective employer. You always mention the skills that they said they are after, because when they look at your CV, they will look at it against the advert and tick boxes and say, okay, he's got this, she's got this, doesn't have this, they don't have this, they have this, and so on and so on. So you want to make sure that you have the skills that they are after. But I learned that this section as well is important because I have received requests to write reports about candidates, about people who I have not been with for a very long time to start with. And secondly, I've worked with them when I was a deputy principal of a school. Now they are applying for lecturing positions, or in fact, senior lecturing position, but research, the things that I was asked to report on were things like their research, you know, and apparently they had written a book, the ability to write articles or write chapters, co-author chapters and all that. And I had no experience of such things. So I couldn't write the report. So it's very important that when you are applying, make sure that the people that you include here are people who know your acquisition of the skills that your prospective employer is after. You know, don't put people on uncomfortable position because you've always had them in your referees. And remember, you don't share people's uh, uh, people's contact details without their consent. Ne, Poppy Act, you ask for permission to use them as your referees. But please make sure that you choose people who know you now, and make sure that you choose people who will be able, you know, to talk about the skills that you have acquired, which your prospective employer is after. So yes, I have mentioned many of the things. Please don't forget that you keep the same format, you know, layout right through. If you've got your years on the left, have them on the right, on the left for all your sections. If you've got your years on the right, do the same for all your sections. If you've got them on top and you've decided to bold your positions, maybe you bold your degree, then you bold your positions as well. If you bold your university, then you bold your companies as well. But don't bold everything and capitalize everything. You know, just whatever you want to draw the attention of your prospective employer to, then you can use any form of punctuation that you want to use. I think I've mentioned, yes, I've mentioned the importance of the dates, also including the titles and responsibilities. Oh, I didn't mention the importance of having part-time or vacation or permanent or internship. Give them an indication if it was not full-time. If it was not full-time, then you don't necessarily, the years will tell, so you don't necessarily have to. Interest, I think I mentioned that they were once optional, but you need to think about the interest that you included. Always remember, a good degree from a good university is not sufficient to get a good job. Yes, it's important, but it does not do the job. It's the skills that enhance your marketability. You get those skills from all these other experiences, co-curricular, extracurricular, work experience. Depending on your degree, we might say your studies as well. If your degree has practical and a practicum or practical aspect of it where you gain skill, then yes, we can say from your degree as well. But mainly from everything that is not necessarily academic. And yes, include skills like your computer. When you include your computer skills or your language skills, don't forget to include proficiency. To say English, Afrikaans, and isiXhosa, you might be called because you claimed to have isiXhosa as well, or to have isiXhosa as a language, only to find it's as basic as my Afrikaans, and it's not really going to add any value for them. So they want to see. Now, if you can take a picture of this skill, these are skills that I have noticed soft skills across, across a myriad of positions, not necessarily as we thought in the past for people who are in certain degrees, but presentation skills are even expected for mathematicians, for engineers, because if you have this bulk of data and you cannot explain what that data means, then you're going to lack, and therefore you are expected to be able to have presentation skills. You are expected to be able to communicate complex ideas. I'm sure in your industry you would be expected to communicate, to have a way of communicated sensitive information. You cannot just say to somebody, you're too fat, that's why you cannot perform this task, or that's why you cannot do this activity. It's because you're not looking after your food and you're not looking after your weight, the food of food you eat. You need to find a way of communicating that sensitive information to people. So some of these things, I find them very common across. Flexibility is becoming a big thing. in companies, especially now during COVID. I'm sure we can all agree that we have had to be flexible. We have had to be resilient. We have had to be adaptable. And be able to adapt to different situations and complexities. So I'm seeing more and more of these now, including networking skills. You can also take a picture of this one. uh, Other transferable skills that are growing now in numbers: complex problem solving, critical thinking, being creative. I used to say I'm not creative until I started working during COVID and creating webinars and all those things. So people need to be creative. Time management is becoming a big thing now, because sometimes people need to work from home, so they need to find a way of managing their time so they can produce results at the end and all that. Yes. Inclusion of transcripts, it depends. Sometimes organizations will say, just submit your CV and that's it. We don't want that. Or so you're going to have to just submit a CV. But sometimes people want to showcase how well they've done in transcripts. But most of the time they tell you when they want your transcripts. Or I think I mentioned whether you should or not include a photo. In the past, I'd say definitely no. But it seems like now it's something that you can do. Please take a picture of this one. This is a short link that I told you about. This bit.ly at /Matis Careers. Please register there, because this is where companies advertise as well. And if you fill in your profile correctly, whenever you come in there, you will probably see which companies of your interest or that fit your profile have advertised, and you will be in a better position to apply, or know at least. Take a picture of the page, because I also want you to be able to send me, if you have more questions about your CV, or you want a one-on-one session with me, you've got personal questions that you would like to ask me, or you think you should be using a skills-based or an academic-based CV, you can contact me. We can arrange something. But please, when you contact me, attach your CV, but it must be your latest CV, a CV that you have worked on after having attended this session. I must not see all the other errors that we spoke about here. At least I must see that you made errors, but you did correct many of them, and then we will be able to talk. Okay, I guess that's about it for now. I'm not sure if there are questions. Okay, it looks like there are questions.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, by all means.
I was just wondering, are we allowed to put our practical skills that we learn in our degree under the skill session? For instance, if we are doing sports science and we've learned the watt bike session, the treadmill testing, and all of that,
Yes.
that's all prac sessions, and that's skills that we've learned in our degree, and they might not know that our degree did that.
Yes, but remember relevance, ne? Yes, you are allowed. You
Okay,
definitely,
perfect.
that's a right space to have them. But remember relevance, ne? When you
Okay.
are applying, it must speak to the needs of your prospective employer. But I would say in your master CV, write all of them, so that because sometimes you take them for granted and you forget them when you need them the most. So write all of them, and then when you are tailoring your CV for a particular position, you go back to your master CV and select, including those if you know that the position needs that.
Okay, thank you so much.
For the question. Any other question? Do we put our practical skills that we learn in our degree? I think it's the same question. All right. It looks like we have responded to all the questions. Am I right? Okay, so is this the time when I should say goodbye to everybody?